So this is just to explain a little bit about the evolution of the PaSTI, and you all know that SIACA phase 1 started in 2017 and did some work on the carbon pricing studies, and then under the SIACA phase 2 we involved in sort of understand the MRV in the ASEAN region. And under the SIACA PaSTI-JAIF phase 1, which is the this phase actually which we are conducting validation today. So we have conducted country studies and surveys to understand the facility level GHG measurement and reporting systems, as well as to understand in broad about the MRV systems in the countries. And also we have also developed a roadmap in order to develop a facility level MNR guideline in the next phase of PaSTI-JAIF. And also we have developed a report on the selection of the priority sectors for which this MNR guideline will be developed. In the next phase of PaSTI-JAIF, as my colleagues have already explained, we will be really developing this MNR guideline and also procedures protocol associated with this guideline, plus some additional work. So the objective of the PaSTI-JAIF phase 1 is mainly to design a roadmap for facility level MNR guideline, and there were also some specific objectives, like we also did some national study on the existing transparency activities, and also the designing roadmap. Also some, actually we also plan to have a technical training in Japan, but due to the COVID-19 global health issue we were unable to conduct, and that's why we had to do this through this webinar. So in the next phase of PaSTI-JAIF, just to give you an overview, actually this can also be related with the roadmap. So we will first select priority sectors based on the studies that we have conducted in the PaSTI phase 1, and then we will in the planning stage we will define the facilities, scope of emission, and GHG covers. So each phase might take around between 2 to 3 months period, and then the next we will do also the identifying the methodology, emission sources, and I'm going to explain anyway in these steps as part of this presentation. And then we will also going to develop some reporting structure. Finally, we will test the MNR guideline, which we are going to develop in the next phase with a couple of identified countries and the facilities. And then this is the content of the presentation. So first I will introduce a little bit about the GHG measurement, reporting, and verification, and then I have very broad slide about selection of priority sectors, but we have a separate presentation on this selection of priority sectors. Then I will also explain about the planning stage, and then how we are going to design the MNR system, and also how we are going to test it and basically pilot the MR guideline with identified countries and the facilities. So about the GHG measurement, reporting, verification, I think we all know that we also did some presentation actually during the country consultations. So that basically integrate the process of measurement, reporting, and verification of the greenhouse gases. And under the measurements, actually we collect the data and information related to the greenhouse gas emission, and then under the reporting, actually we compile those collected information and report to relevant users in a way that they are required. So under verification, actually you can have internal verification and also some external verification to verify the gathered data and also the quantification of the GHG emissions. So if you look at the type of MRVs for greenhouse gas emissions, I mean under the mitigations, you can have the MRV of emissions, and also MRV of mitigation actions, and MRV of support. Under the MRV of emissions, we know that we can have the national level GHG emissions, which is basically like a preparation of the GHG inventory as part of the national communication from the countries. And then you can also have the organization level GHG emission, which is basically like a corporate level GHG emissions, where they quantify the GHG impact from all the facilities that are part of their corporate sector. So under the facility level MRV system, we are going to assess the GHG impact only on a particular facility. It can be a power plant, it can be a cement plant, it will be a single facility actually. So in this exercise, we are going to focus only on the facility level GHG measurement and reporting. So we are not going to cover the national GHG inventory, neither corporate sector. Indeed, you can also have the MRV of mitigation actions, like tracking the GHG impact of the NDCs, and also tracking the SD impacts of those NDCs or other mitigation actions. Or also you can have the track the progress of implementing the mitigation actions. So anyway, as part of this exercise, PaSTI-JAIF phase 1 and 2, we are not going to cover this elements of MRV of mitigation actions. You can also have the MRV of support, that will be basically to track the GHG, the measurement report and verification of the support, like the technical support, financial support, from the related to climate change from various bodies. Actually, we are also not going to cover that part. And then I have already explained about these elements, actually MRV of national level, organization and facility level. So as I mentioned to you, our focus is actually the facility level GHG measurement and reporting. So why do we need to have facility level GHG measurement reporting? This is a very important point actually, because it can enhance the comparability and transparency of GHG measurement and reporting at the facility level. So for example, let's say that we are going to use the same standard facility level MNR guideline across the ASEAN member states. Then the emissions, quantified emissions, 1 ton of CO2 from a power plant in one ASEAN member states can be as same as the another country when they are using the same guideline. So that's a very important point actually. And also it can also improve the data management in the national communication. So when you have a facility level data, greenhouse gas emission, because most of the countries actually, when they do the national communication, in particular when they prepare the GHG inventory, they are using the top down data. So but if you can collect the bottom up data, like the facility level greenhouse gas emission data, that can be directly fed into the GHG inventory, and those data can be more accurate than the top down. So that also can be important point. And also it can also enhance the compatibility of the MRV systems among the countries. So when you have a common GHG MRV systems, so that can also enhance the compatibility, because the way you collect the data, way you report, and way you calculate, everything can be same. So that can enhance compatibility, in particular when you are going to introduce something like carbon pricing in future. So this compatibility is very important. Yeah, so that's what our next point basically, service enable system with regional carbon market. So for this point, actually, this having a compatible MR system is going to be very, very useful. So in terms of selection of priority sector, we have a separate report on this. We have also prepared a separate presentation. So we actually prepared this report based on a request that came from the AMS during the international workshop held in Manila, that they would like to see a quantitative approach to select the methodologies. So we developed some criteria to prioritize the sectors and subsectors for which this MNR guideline will be developed in the phase 2. And then we also collected the data input for this use from the questionnaires that we submitted to the member states, and also we collect this input. Through this, actually we could get their priorities, and also we conducted several interviews, discussion, disc reviews. So through this we could collect the input for this criteria, and then we applied those data to the AHP method, which is one of the multi-criteria dimensional analysis. So that was applied to quantitatively select the priority sectors and subsectors. So that we will be presenting actually in the next presentation. So with regard to the developing GHG measurement and reporting guideline, facility level guideline for ASEAN member states, the first actually we need to define the scope and boundaries. I mean, basically we need to define what is a facility, because if you look at the various standards, they have a various different definition, and some countries may already have a definition of facilities. So we are going to undertake take a sort of a stock of those existing definitions, and then to propose the member states, okay, this is what we recommend to be used as a definition, and then we will have some discussion, consultation with the focal points of the member states to agree on a definition. I think probably it can be a definition which has been already already in the existing guideline or standards, or it can be something that we are proposing newly. So those things will be based on the discussion actually. So yeah, and then we will conduct a stakeholder consultation indeed to agree on this, and then finally we agree on the definition. So the expected outcome from this process is basically to agree on a common definition for facilities with the approval of the AMS. And then we will also need to understand what GHG emissions will be included in the scope. So what we are going to do actually, we are going to take a stock of the national communication BUR, BTR submitted to AMS by UNFCCC. Actually, we have not yet submitted the BTR. The BTR will be submitted by 2024, but mostly we will rely on the NCs and BUR. And then we will assess the scope of emissions measured by each selected facilities. So especially countries who have done this GHG emissions measurement at the facility level, so we can understand bit on the what sort of GHG emissions they have measured at the facility level. And then we will list down all these GHG emissions and the users of those emissions, and the users of the guideline also. We will also again conduct the stakeholder consultation to agree on the GHG emissions. So it has to be also agreed between the stakeholders that we are going to select, that will be involved, because it is very important to get the endorsement from the stakeholders about what emissions should be included in this part of. So the expected outcome of this exercise would be to identify emissions for the relevant sectors. And the GHG covered, actually that's also important, because we have all 7 GHG types which have been considered as a greenhouse gases by the UNFCCC process under the convention. So we have need to discuss whether we are going to use all GHGs, all these 7 gases, or whether we are going to select only couple of them, and that we are also going to check what GHGs are covered under GHG inventory, if they are already covering all 7 or whether they cover only 5 or 4. So then we will suggest, okay, maybe we can go for this number of GHGs for the sectors and subsectors, and then after the stakeholder consultation we can agree on the GHGs covered. So when we are going to design the MNR system, we have some steps actually. For the measurement, we select a methodology. This is very important to select a methodology, because without a methodology it's difficult to quantify the GHG impact. And then agree on the source of emissions, identification of the parameters, and then finally the emission factors. So in terms of selecting the methodology for quantification of the GHG impact under the proposed measurement and reporting guideline, first we will take a stock of the existing methodologies for the facility level, for the selected sectors and the subsectors. And then we will compare those internationally available methodologies to see which one would be more appropriate for the selected sectors and subsectors in the ASEAN region. And then we will agree on a methodology out of those internationally available methodology. With regard to the source of the emissions, we need to identify the emission sources for each facility, whether we are going to cover for example, if it is a power plant, whether we are going to cover the GHG emissions of burning the fossil fuel, or whether we are also going to cover the GHG emissions attributed to the import of energy for the internal users, or whether we are also going to cover the emissions which are attributed part of the transmission and distribution of the energy. So likewise we will discuss. Actually this will be also be based on the national communication existing facility level GHG assessment. We will also indeed discuss whether we should include indirect or direct emissions. So based on the gathered data, we will recommend what information to be included. And then parameter identification. Of course, once we have the selected methodology might say that, okay, you need to measure these parameters in order to quantify the GHG emissions. And then we will develop some data collection template. And if data collections are not available, we are going to do it. But if we already have a data collection template from the standards and also which are can be applied for the selected sectors and subsectors, then we can use it as it is. But if there are some modification needed, of course we will do. And then in terms of data, actually we will, based on the methodology, actually we propose two options. One option, actually we will use our data templates that we have developed or adapted to collect the data. But in case if this does not help to collect more than 50% of the data, then we need to think about different approach. But if you can collect most of the data through this data collection process, then we will use those templates. And then parameter identification, again actually we need to agree on those parameters, and also we will prepare procedures for the collection of data and the protocol also what data are mandatory, but in the absence of certain data what other data can be used. Likewise, some protocols will be developed based on the agreed methodology. We will also develop the monitoring plan, monitoring methodology, parameters, monitoring procedures, organizing structure, who will be collecting and how this data will be collected, how frequently. So these things will be developed. Actually this we, as part of this, actually we expect to come up with a set of parameters to be measured, data collection procedures, data collection template, and also data protocols. So the emission factors is very important one. Actually we will, again, for the selected sectors and subsectors, we will prepare the list of databases available, emission factor databases in the region and globally for the selected sector and subsector. And then we will identify the emission factors also using this national communication and the emission factors of the sector respective facilities, what they have already been measuring. And then we will also, it's very important to agree on the tier system for this emission factors, whether we are going to use the facility level emission factors, regional or the global one. So these things also we will analyze and discuss with the relevant facilities and the AMS, and then agree on the most appropriate approach for the selected sector and subsectors. In terms of reporting, actually we will develop data management system and also the reporting structure, what information should be included and how, and the data management system will indicate when and how data will be collected, when and to whom, and all those things. So for the data management system, actually again we will take a stock of the data management systems existing in the national communication, DUR and NAMA, also at the facility level. And then we aim to adopt one existing data management system, but there can be some minor changes that we will discuss with the stakeholders and agree. So data management system and institutional arrangement, how the data will be flown, who will be collecting, what data will be collected. So this kind of documents will be developed. The structure of the report, again we will look at the existing standard depending on what standard that we are going to use. So we will also propose a reporting structure for the facility measurement of the facility level GHG system. Again we will discuss with the stakeholders and agree on the report content, what to be included, what not to be included. And then finally, once we develop the guideline, basically it will be a package, actually measurement guideline plus reporting template, data management system, monitoring procedure, protocol and all. So once this entire package is ready, then we will test it with some identified countries and also with the facilities to see how it works, and whether we can further improve. And we need to actually identify some facilities which will be based on the interest that was shown by certain facilities during the phase 1 of PaSTI-JAIF, and also for some consultation with the focal points. And we also conduct capacity building with the facilities, how to apply this, how to do the calculation, and then what difficulties they have. So we will also try to understand whether it can be easily applied, whether there are any difficulties, how we can mitigate that. Yeah, so the stakeholder engagement is a very important one. And so, but we have identified these as the key stakeholders for now. Actually, for the, of course, the focal point of the each member states, and also the Ministry of Environment, Energy, Ministry of Industries are considered as the very important stakeholders in addition to the focal point of the member states. And then the private sector members, this organization, facilities who are interested to test this one. Experts will also play a key role. International consultant on MRV, national expert on the MRV, and technical expert, because we can get the help from the national expert, also the technical expert in the sectors to get the data, analyze, and you apply that. So, and others will be like OECC is a project management entity, and other interested parties will be playing a big role on this. So thank you very much for listening, and if you have any question, either you can ask now, or we can wait till we have the Q&A session. Thank you very much.